Welcome, everyone, to EDD in Progress, writing about themes and action plans. This is one of our late in the semester webinars, so I'm going to gloss over all the normal business about making an appointment. You can find this discussed in detail on pretty much any Writing Center webinar video, and we are always open and happy to work with students at no charge. This is the very last webinar on our schedule for the summer, and for summer one, I should say. And we have more webinars coming in summer two. You can view the schedule online and sign up immediately. This is part of our larger EDD in Progress series of webinars, which are all tied to specific course assignments. So if you are taking a course in the future that happens to align with this list here, great. But we're also adding to it every term. So for example, next term, I believe we have 4 tie-ins with the EDD program dealing with more classes here. So if you look at this list, and you're, say, planning on taking 721 next semester, and you're saying, well, do you have more? Well, actually, we do have another one scheduled for next term. And again, that can be found on the Writing Center website, and you can sign up today. All right, some of the things that you'll see me using today include the APA course paper template. You can download that from many of our class websites, but you can always get the latest, greatest from the online Writing Center website through the link at the top here. All right, we're doing a focus webinar because we know it's late in the term. Many of you are finishing grading in your own teaching or administrative careers and are ready to put a bow on the academic year, so we won't keep you too long. We're going to do a very focused look at the Leadership 714 Week 7 assignment, and we'll finish with talking about how to outline and draft that one. All right, so let's dive in. So this is for, I'm sorry, just one moment. Apologies for that. Brief technical difficulty, now taken care of. So yes, we're looking at the Self-Leadership Analysis and Development Plan for Leadership 714, Self-Assessment and Leadership. All right, so if you look at the instructions, you'll find that this assignment starts with a preamble. Now, in this final assignment, you will pull together all the information you've collected about yourself over the last few weeks and organize it into a manageable plan. Review and analyze the battery of assessments you've completed in this course. Rather than developing separate plans to build strengths, character, emotional intelligence, etc., you will synthesize these data to develop 3 or 4 overarching themes that have emerged about yourself. And then there are a couple examples given. And your task is to show how these themes are evident in your past or present life and to discuss how well they've worked. You want to ground this discussion in the course materials that you've been reading and citing in your papers. You can add additional sources, but it's not required. And ultimately, this is being used to develop an action plan to help you meet your goals, both in this program and beyond. There's a note to not confuse the different types of assessments with the themes that you're finding or identifying and labeling about yourself. They can certainly be related, but don't mix up your terminology. And then we have, after that preamble, we have the details on what you're writing, which is going to be a 6 to 8 page paper, where the first main section should be synthesizing the readings for the current module. And you should be taking a big picture perspective. And so not only listing the things here, but saying, okay, well, how does this align with the rest? What are the larger messages or lessons that you're taking from that? Part 2 is going to be where you analyze yourself. So you might understand this as the self-analysis section. And here you're going to identify those 3 or 4 themes mentioned earlier, and you're going to discuss this with reference to the information that you've read throughout the course and connect it ultimately to that concept of self-leadership. And you need to assess this. Well, how well has it worked? How well hasn't it? And based on how well or not well it has worked, you're going to create that self-leadership action plan. And there are a couple specific instructions here, one of which is you shouldn't be reusing the content of previous papers, but a lot of the ideas should be interwoven together. So certainly things that you discussed will come back, just not, copy and pasting paragraphs and paragraphs. All right. So they advise you to have your plan include the long-term goal of completing the EdD program, and we certainly want you all to graduate. And we also want to make sure that this is listing tangible, specific activities or changes that you're making that are feasible and will help you meet your goal, and that you contextualize this with the SMART goals. Now, this next thing, I've applied the designation of that this is really a separate part of the instructions here. That the paper should be strengthened by references to the course materials, meaning make sure it's grounded, as many of your previous assignments have been in this course, and make sure that there is a clear argument being presented in each paragraph. And then if you're browsing the description in Canvas, you'll see that there are some videos that you're asked to review about paragraph writing, and also this as reminder that we're using strict APA style here, which limits the use of we and the use of the global you or our, which is to say you can identify yourself using I, me, and my. But for this paper, you probably should not be using we, you, or our and their derivatives. So you see the rubric here, we have approximately equal weighting going to the synthesis section, and then the analysis here, that's the overarching themes. So those should be a comparable length, and they're each worth about, well, they're worth exactly 20% each of your grade. The action plan should be pretty fleshed out because a whole 40% of your grade is going to that. And then the rest of the grade comes from making sure this is well written, of appropriate length, grounded in personal experiences and scholarly sources, etc., etc. All right. Well, for a final paper here, this is reasonably concise. We can eyeball this and say, okay, so probably based on the length here, the synthesis section should be 1.5 to 2 pages. Same thing with the analysis or overarching theme section. And that action plan is going to be fairly substantial. That's going to be probably 3 to 4 pages. And then throw in a brief introduction and conclusion, and we're right at the length where we need to be. So I would love to solicit a audience volunteer to just give me a professional area or experience of some sort to use as an example here. If you don't mind typing that in the chat window, that will let me know what you have to propose. If you are one of the people who is joining us by phone, you can also, even though you're getting the audio through your phone, you can go to the Zoom app and send that to me as either an open chat or as a private message. All right, for this next step, I'm going to grab a copy of the APA course paper template I referred to. As a reminder, this is something that is available through pretty much all of your course websites, but you can always grab the latest and greatest from the ACU Writing Center website. As the maintainer of this template, there's sometimes small tweaks, or we make changes to accommodate different and versions of Word, and so you can get that from our website, and they'll always be the most current. So I'm going to change my screen sharing now here so that I'll be sharing the copy of the course paper template. And please let me know that you can see it, because sometimes Zoom takes a little while to catch up with us. So if you can let me know via message that you can see it, great. Thank you. All right. So next on our list. So this is the template as you would download it. Now, if you've been using our course paper template already, you probably know how it works. And so you can quickly remove all this stuff here, these instructional comments, by going to review, and with the delete button, select the wedge or chevron here and select delete all comments and document. And now we have a clean copy here. And so you can go ahead and start filling in some of the information here. For example, uh, the name of the paper. Uh, this need not be a fancy. Uh, you can just use the name of the assignment. You can use a more descriptive name, but all we need is something that says what this is. APA style does not emphasize the poetic nature of the text. It's does it communicate clearly, and is it formatted according to APA style? So, all right, I've got my paper here. I'm gonna stick in my name, and you can fill in the course and the instructor and stuff like that later. All right, this assignment does not require an abstract, so I'm just going to delete that page. And then the title of your paper goes at the top of the second page now. And I'm going to go ahead and I will remove all this placeholder text because I know how the template works and I just need to start typing my paper or the outline for my paper. All right, so what will I do here? Well, I'm going to start by grabbing the material from the assignment instructions. This is always a good strategy to make sure that you have all the things that you need to do. And I'm not going to include the preamble, I'm going to include the main instructions. If you're looking on the web page, this is where it starts after write a 6 to 8 page paper. And yeah, there's some stuff that is more instructional that you can quickly take out to focus this outline. So looking at this here, I know that there are going to be several main parts. There's going to be an introduction here, so I'm just going to put in here and paragraph here. And so that will help orient the reader. And then I'm going to go through and I'm just going to start adding headings here. So part one, I'm going to make this an APA level 1 heading. If you're wondering how I did that, so up at the top of the screen, there's this APA level 1 button. You can also open up the styles pane using this button here and select it here. You can see that as soon as I click on that button, it will get formatted the way an APA level 1 heading should, which is to say bolded, centered, and also in title case. Same thing with analysis. Now, a very common error is for students writing course papers to confuse the title of the paper for an APA level 1 heading. Now, when you get to writing a dissertation chapter, then that chapter name will be an APA level 1 heading. But in just a regular course paper, this is just the title. It's considered separately. So the first heading underneath that should be a level 1, and analysis is also a high level heading, so level 1. Self-leadership action plan, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and make that AP level 1. And then you're probably going to want a conclusion. So I'm going to go ahead and add that here as well. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and start just crossing off the things that aren't telling me what I need to have content-wise. And I know, all right, I should be grounding it in references. All right, so what should be listed here? Well, if we go back and we check the Module 7 reading. All right, coming down to it. So, week 7, reaching the destination. So, let's check our readings and resources here. And so we have the self leadership text, and we have these articles here, and they are mostly in APA style. There are some things where like these little arrows for downloading the files that if you're to just copy and paste this, you need to make sure you take that out. But overall, if you started by copy and pasting this into your reference list, so long as you actually cite all of those, then that'll be a great start. So you can do that, save yourself a little time. You'll want to grab a copy of the self leadership text reference. You can probably just copy and paste that from a previous paper in this course, as well as any others that you've used before that you want to cite in this paper. All right. So back to our outline here. So one of those key steps is to make sure that you are not just summarizing, but that you're actually applying the new information. Now, again, looking at the instructions for this assignment, if the complete paper is going to be 6 to 8 pages, and given that 20% of the points are for the synthesis section, well, a fifth of 6 to 8 is going to be around, say, 1 1/3 to 1 3/4. So we're talking somewhere a little bit under 2 pages maximum. So I know that that's probably going to be like maybe 4 or 5 paragraphs, something like that. So that lets you look at this and think, okay, well, how am I going to really discuss this? And one of those helpful things is to go back and look at the readings that you've done and think, okay, so how do these fit together and how does that sit with me? So in this case, this reading, there are a couple sources that are talking about gratitude, and another is talking about these two here are talking about two interrelated concepts: spiritual fulfillment and burnout. Burnout happens a lot more when you don't have that spiritual fulfillment. So those are logical pairs to say, oh, I can write a paragraph where I talk about these two sources individually and then synthesize them together. So since I've now decided that I'm going to write about those, well, I'm going to go ahead and I will copy and paste those into my Word document. Place these placeholders here because I know that there'll be some stuff that I'll have to clean up. I will not just paste, but I will also make sure that this is formatted correctly. And I see, oh, there's some stuff I need to clean up here. This is, by the way, an area where people often lose some points because if you're rushing at to get this in at the last moment, then you're more likely to not notice that, oh, hey, there's some extra underlining that doesn't belong. So here I'm going to go ahead and select that download text here, delete that. This link should be active, so just why type space at the end. And here, Burnout at Work, that should not have a link on it. So if I put my cursor over it and I press Control K if I'm on a Windows computer or Command K on a Mac, I can then click the Remove Link button. I'll go ahead and do this here again. Again, I just need to have my cursor clicked into there, and I'll press Control K or Command K on a Mac and remove link. And you see, oh, these are also bullets, and that's not what I want. So what I do want is for these to be in the APA reference style. And so I'll go ahead and apply that style to each. Now we've got the tab indent, and I see, oh, hold on, this is slightly out of order. 2017, comma, June. Great. And here the spacing isn't quite right. Usually that happens if I just replace this with a space. There it goes. All right, so we've got those two sources here, Neck and Milliman and Sapala and King. And so I'm going to give myself a note in the outline. And I just start making notes to myself about what's going to go into each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to discuss Neck and Milliman. And then one of the things to do is to say, okay, well, how does this fit together? And in this case, if we're talking about the connection between spiritual fulfillment and burnout and about the particular loneliness angle in this Apollo and King thing, then I can give myself a note here. Make sure to relate loneliness to. And part of the way that you can create new meaning is not just by saying, well, these things put together, but also by applying them from the original context to something like your particular career, your professional arc, or the relationships around you. And that could be saying, yeah, in my experience, I've often noticed this thing that they mentioned. And Neckham and Millman say, this is very important. And Sapal and King say that. And I have seen that in my own experience. Example here. So you can go ahead and fill this in. And if you start doing this as you're doing the reading, then you're not hunting for ideas later. You're putting in notes to yourself on what to write about as you go. Now, these themes, there are two traps that I've seen people fall into, and they're very simple ones. One is they just start writing and they end up with like 5 or 6 themes, and the instructions say only 3 or 4. The other is when they talk about the larger theme in their life and then they don't get up to that 3 or 4 count. So, one of the advice pieces that I will give you is to make the list of those themes early. And if you have, roughly a paragraph each, then you're going to end up with right around the right length for this section. So I'd say start with this one. And if you only end up with 3, that's fine. Just update your outline accordingly. If you end up with a lot, then look at how they might be clustered and form a larger theme from collapsing some of them together. You can always talk about how they break down into other things in the individual paragraphs. So here's an example that one of my older students, who is now a high school superintendent, mentioned. He talked about one of his themes was being a white knight. And so what happens there? Well, once it's listed, we start discussing it. And it's not just listing those insights yourself, but grounding it in the literature that you've been reading earlier in the course and in this one. And so, for example, if I was going to now ground this in the Woodfrow and Garrity source, well, as we did before, I'm going to go ahead and grab that one. And because I know that I'm referring to it, I'm going to immediately add it to my reference list so I don't forget. And then, as before, I'm going to start and say match destination formatting. And then I'll start deleting the things that don't belong, like this download bit. I'm going to remove this link. Now, this is an interesting thing. I wonder if there's a special issue or something like that, which is the reason why there's that information in the issue field. And so to check that out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up the DOI. And so the DOI, or digital object identifier, will always lead me to where that article is. And so I can poke around and see, okay, well, let's see. It tells me here the title of the journal is Clinical Psychology Review, and the volume was 30, the issue was 7. Now, it might be that was a special themed issue here, but what matters for our purposes here is that it was issue 7. So, armed with that information, I can go back to my Word document and just replace this with the number 7. And as before, this didn't quite page break right, so I just go ahead and I delete the space and add a new one. And then now it lines up. Great, so I'm going to be citing Wood et al. 2010 here. So going back up to my outline, and so you just start filling in like that. Now, you can certainly start the analysis section by just listing those themes and dive right into discussing the first one. Then for the next one, next paragraph, you discuss the second theme, third theme, and the fourth if you have one. And then one of these things, you have these other instructions which are reminders about what you're supposed to do. All right. So if you feel that any of your previous strengths, for example, from Strength Finder, help show that or why that is something that is very expressive for you, you can list it. And also, how have these worked well in these settings? So I can go ahead and I'm just going to copy and paste this here because it's the kind of thing that you can use as a model here. And so you can see answering those prompts very quickly leads you to have a substantial paragraph for this. And again, we only need a 3 or 4 of those substantial paragraphs, and then we will be ready and able to go. Now, the self leadership action plan, this is not something that people tend to have a lot of trouble with. Usually, if there's an issue, it comes with being clear that you are listing those tangible activities. So I'd recommend using the language from the prompt here and have something like And the first behavioral change that I planned to make is, in this way, there's no doubt on your reader's mind that you are answering that prompt. You are listing a specific activity, and you can develop that. Okay, well, why is it important you to make this? What's the timeline for this? And so on and so forth. Now, I did promise that we would be giving you some extra time back today because it is late in the term. So at this point, I will say we have covered everything that we planned to today. We have reviewed some of the aspects of the assignment and how to understand the different instructions. We have talked about how to use those as a basis for building a growing outline. We've talked about how to proofread those sources as you move the reference entries into your reference list and make sure that they are fully formatted for APA 7 style. And with that, I will say, have a good evening, good writing, and if you need some help from the Writing Center, you know where to find us. Have a great evening.